So recently, Dutchsinse on June 2nd showed that all of the fires in Quebec started simultaneously from the radar, the overhead images. I realized just a minute ago he showed the same thing happened in the United States 2 months prior. And his thumbnail here says hotspots, sudden fires across 7 states. First, we'll check out Quebec.
The north. But back to it. I'm going to go over to the regional sector again. We're going to look at Quebec. This just happened today, last night, going into this morning. 1 to 1,000. Well, maybe not 1,000, but you see it. That's insane. To have them all go at once? Look, I mean, what do we got? A group doing this? Well, I mean, it's either the plate shifting and releasing heat, which is then coming up and igniting root systems down in the ground, which is then coming up to the surface and exploding with heat of some kind, or methane is igniting when it gets to the surface, again from heat, or people are doing this. Or there's a third possibility of something else maybe up in space, or an aircraft or something with some kind of directed energy weapon could also possibly do stuff like this over this vast of an area all at once. But on a clear day like that, man, dude, okay, gotta say something, gotta show everybody. I can't believe it. I have to.
Or another possibility is geomagnetic induction.
You got a problem going on up there that might be related to, I don't know. What do you think? You think that these fires might be related to, I don't know. What do you think? Terrorism? Directed energy weapon? War? The Russians? Chinese? What? Ourselves? All the above? Whatever.
So, when we see these fires start simultaneously, I would say this proves that whatever started one of those fires started all of those fires, but this does not determine whether it is directed energy or something more like geomagnetic induction. But this does determine for us that whatever started one of those fires started all of them. But if you ask the officials, they'll say it was a cigarette butt here and a lightning strike there and a car that parked on some dry weeds over here with a hot muffler and a trailer that was dragging some chains that caused a spark over there, and maybe they'll admit arson here or there. But what we can acknowledge by seeing this ignite simultaneously is that whatever caused one fire caused all of the fires. Here we'll just watch 3 minutes of this video from 2 months ago, where he spotted the same thing happening in the United States across 7 states simultaneously. Dutchsinse discovered plasma fire.
Hello, everybody. It's 9:17 p.m. Central Time on the 7th of April, 2023. It's Friday night here in the United States, and I hope you're doing well. I've got something I want to show you that's happening, being picked up on the weather satellite in shortwave infrared and visible. We've got something very, very strange happening across the Midwest United States right now. So let me get a display capture turned on, show you what we're talking about here. We're looking at College of DuPage. I'll provide links down below. You can go to any weather service that you're using to view. We're using the True Color View for the Midwest United States. We're going to look at Kansas, Oklahoma, and Missouri. And what we'll do is the shortwave view is going to graduate over to sunrise right here. And what I want you to do is just watch here at the center of the screen, and we'll just show you what's going on. On a clear day, all of a sudden, across 3 states, this, across Missouri, Kansas, and Oklahoma. Now, as sun sets, you're going to see the hot spots appear here. These are black spots.
Those black dots are the heat signatures, which are plasma fires.
That are showing it heat signatures where the fires, quote unquote, are all breaking out at once. This is not farmers burning their fields. You don't do something like this. It all starts at the same time. Look at this. Literally one, and then boom, all of them, thousands of them all at once across multiple states. There's no way farmers are all getting together and deciding to burn their fields all at once, all at one time, at the same moment across 3 states. Something's going on here, and I'm now going to go turn on our shortwave infrared view. We'll go in and look really close at this and just zoom in and see the area in question. Again, we're talking about Oklahoma, Kansas, and Missouri. I guess I should probably select. There we go. Here's Kansas. Down south, we'll go look at Oklahoma. Here's Missouri. Here's Iowa. And we'll go back to last night. Here's last night. Nothing. And then starting this morning, boom, thousands. And the smoke starts to kick up. You see we're flickering on and off in the other states as well. Very rare. We don't get this kind of stuff here in Missouri. And we can rule out oil pumping operations in Missouri. So, and we can rule out farmers burning their fields as well, because some of these just flicker for like 5 minutes. They're several acres wide of a heat signature, and then it's just gone. So there's no way it could just be like a spot burn or something, because they're gone in 5 minutes, and it's tens of thousands of them all at once. Now, what it looks like is going on here is, well, something else over here in Colorado. This is what tipped me off of your road.
Now we'll watch 2 minutes of the Secretary of Defense back in 2016 acknowledging the existence of directed energy weapons and that they are capable of long-range fires.
Everyone, I'm Secretary of Defense Mark Esper. It's an honor to join you for this year's Air, Space, and Cyberspace Conference. Thank you to the Air Force Association for hosting an important event that brings together the world's finest aerospace leaders and professionals. First and foremost, I'd like to wish a happy birthday to the United States Air Force. For 73 years and counting, you have provided our nation with unlimited reach, unmatched power, and unyielding vigilance across the globe. As we look toward the next 7 decades and beyond, emerging technologies are fundamentally altering the character of warfare. Our air, space, and cyber personnel will be at the forefront of tomorrow's high-end fight. In the years ahead, wars will be fought not just on land and sea, as they have for thousands of years, or in the air as they have for the past century, but also in outer space and cyberspace in unprecedented ways. Preparing for this requires modernizing our force for high-intensity conflict. It requires strengthening our network of allies and partners. And it requires expanding our warfighting capabilities across all 5 of these domains. In this era of great power competition, we cannot take for granted the United States' long-held advantages. The Air Force, in particular, has maintained uncontested air superiority for decades, with persistent intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, and precision airstrikes anytime, anywhere. However, our near-peer rivals, China and Russia, seek to erode our long-standing dominance in air power through long-range fires, anti-access aerial denial systems, and other asymmetric capabilities designed to counter our strengths. Meanwhile, in space, Moscow and Beijing have turned a once peaceful arena into a warfighting domain. They have weaponized space through killer satellites, directed energy weapons, and more in an effort to exploit our systems and chip away at our military advantage. However, our near-peer rivals, China and Russia, seek to erode our long-standing dominance in air power through long-range fires, anti-access aerial denial systems, and other asymmetric capabilities designed to counter our strengths. Meanwhile, in space, Moscow and Beijing have turned a once peaceful arena into a warfighting domain. They have weaponized space through killer satellites, directed energy weapons, and more in an effort to exploit our systems and chip away.
So he said it in reverse. It would have made more sense if he would have acknowledged they are using directed energy weapons and then said they are trying to erode our advantage through long-range fires. Now, I know a lot of people will think, well, no, he just meant like long-range firing capability, like a missile. He said long-range fires. He speaks very eloquently. This is a pre-written script. They do not speak in generalities. Or no, I meant long-range firing capability. Right after that, he acknowledged directed energy weapons are in use, and when we can see that those directed energy weapons are capable of producing long-range fires, it is very logical to presume that he meant exactly what he said 2 seconds prior to that, when he said that that is how they are trying to erode our superiority, is through long-range fires. Not long-range firing capability of conventional weapons as we understand them, more like what he followed it up with 1 sentence later, directed energy. But don't get hung up on that, because 99% of my videos that I've taken are out in the middle of nowhere where the only thing that is being affected by this energy is fence posts and trees. Those do not seem like a target that energy could be directed at with any usefulness. There is no benefit to, and so the massive amount of plasma fires that I've documented, 99.9% of them are in areas where there is no target, so it therefore cannot be directed, and if it is being directed, then it is intentionally being directed out into a place where it will only hit trees and fence posts, as if to reduce the pressure and release that energy somewhere where it's rather benign and harmless. Remember that. Don't get hung up on the fact that these directed energy weapons exist and that they're capable of producing long-range fires. And remember that 99.9% of my documentation shows, like EBT said, what am I shilling for big fence post? He was acknowledging that most of my roadside fires I've documented are just random fence posts and trees. Therefore, to think that those are being directed in some sort of weaponized fashion is illogical and irrational. If they are being directed, it is to our benefit that this energy, this geomagnetic induction, this fluctuation in the magnetic field creates a surge of ground current. And when that ground current rises to a certain point where they're measuring it and knowing it's going to spring up through the surface wherever it finds a release through the path of least resistance, which means it's most likely to hit a house or something metal, they direct that geomagnetic induction, increased surge of ground current, to a place where it won't do much harm to anything. So, 99.9% of my documentation shows that either this isn't really being directed in 99.9% of the cases, and it's just some sort of natural phenomenon releasing itself through geomagnetic induction and a fluctuation in the magnetic field that produces a surge of ground current that just randomly pops up in the middle of nowhere. Or if it's being directed, it is to our benefit that it is being directed into harmless areas. So, I've been fighting this for 5 years. Everyone goes, directed energy, directed energy. When my library of videos shows otherwise. So, in summary, yes, directed energy weapons exist, and they are capable of producing long-range fires. Exactly what he said. He did not misspeak. But 99% of what I've documented is in a place where there is no target. It is illogical to imagine that it was directed out into the middle of a pasture where it only took out some farmer's fence posts, or some tree here and there, random little spots. Which means it's far more likely that even it is the same exact energy that can be directed, okay? We know in some cases it was directed, like the 5 Secret Service vehicles of Joe Biden's that all ignited simultaneously while the engines were shut off, and it melted the engine block right out of them. That is one of the burn signatures of plasma fire. So in some cases, we do know this same type of energy that produces the same exact burn patterns, burns trees from the inside. When it hits an urban area, it burns houses to the ground and leaves the trees around the house standing. It melts the rims and the glass and the engine block when it latches onto a car. And when there is no metal or housing or cars around, it just burns the trees, and it burns them from the inside. So, I believe it is the same exact energy. When we're experiencing it randomly releasing here and there, just hitting a fence post here and a fence post there, and occasionally houses and cars, same exact energy that can be directed. They tap into the same energy reservoir that is naturally overwhelming our environment. That is my opinion. And the fact that we know it can be directed from certain instances, like those 5 Secret Service vehicles, or Tianjin, China, or Paradise, California, in certain instances we know for sure it was directed. So if they can direct that energy, it is not a stretch of the imagination to consider that maybe they are directing it when it's just popping up out in these fields and burning things that don't really cost lives or property damage to a great degree. It isn't a stretch of the imagination to imagine that. 99% of my videos that seem more like a random, sporadic release of this energy is actually being directed because it can be directed. Therefore, it makes sense that they would direct it rather than letting it spring forth from the ground, find its own path of least resistance. And otherwise, if this was coming out randomly with all of the videos, the hundreds of videos that I've made, there would be more of these instances where it happens in cities, because those are the more conductive material, areas with more conductive material. The fact that we don't see many of these in cities, and most of them are, in my library, out in the countryside, rural area, means there's a good chance this energy is being directed like a bleeder valve, where they open up the release valve to release the pressure when the ground current is surging so high because the magnetic field is fluctuating to the degree that it is. They open up the release valve out in the countryside, just like when you touch the outer globe of a plasma lamp that you can buy for 20 bucks on Amazon. They touch the outer globe of the land to draw the energy out into that rural area, so it only affects fence posts and trees, and they can reduce the amount of ground current that is accumulating when that magnetic field fluctuates.
However, our near-peer rivals, China and Russia, seek to erode our long-standing dominance in air power through long-range fires, anti-axis aerial denial systems, and other asymmetric capabilities designed to counter our strengths. Meanwhile, in space, Moscow and Beijing have turned a once peaceful arena into a warfighting domain. They have weaponized space through killer satellites, directed energy weapons, and more in an effort to exploit our systems and